Good evening, everybody. So I'm still in the UK. I haven't gone traveling yet, but I thought I'd sit down today and do a quick Q&A, just answer a few questions after my bombshell life update that I'm taking a sabbatical from my job and going traveling for 6 months. It's quite a big change. 2025 has got a big adventure in store for me, and I asked for some questions over on my Instagram account, and I'm gonna run through some of those. If you want to get involved with some of the Q&A questions in the future, my Instagram is @_page_y. I will link it in the description. And thank you so much to everyone who sent in questions. Let's go. Let's start with a basic question of where are you going? Because I partly broadly answered this in my travel announcement video, but I haven't given you guys the details yet. So I've got 2 months in Australia, starting off in Melbourne, which is where I'm flying to in literally 2 days' time. Spending a week in Melbourne, having a little explore, not on a group tour. That part is literally just me going solo, hopefully making some friends in hostels, hopefully catching some of the Australian Open tennis. Then I'm going to fly to Sydney, where I'll join a group tour. I've got a week of group tour exploring Sydney, then a few days going to the Blue Mountains. Then I'll be working up the East Coast doing Byron Bay, Brisbane, Noosa, the Whitsundays, Fraser Island, Great Barrier Reef, round Cairns, all of that jazz up the East Coast. Potentially going to the Northern Territory to see some of the rock formations, Alice Springs area. Not sure about that though. Obviously it takes quite a while to get there. Australia's quite a big country. I've only got a week or so before I need to head off to New Zealand at the end of my group tour, so we'll see how we go. New Zealand, I've got a pretty whistle-stop tour of all of the North and South Islands. It's only 17 days. And you can get tours that are much longer than that, and people can spend a very long time going around New Zealand. It is a lot smaller, but there's just a lot of natural beauty there. So actually, I initially said I was going to spend a month in New Zealand. I think it's going to be more like 3 weeks all in, because then I'm jetting off to Thailand. Thailand, I'm spending about a month exploring, and that will be in a group tour. And that takes me up to middle of May. And quite honestly, after that, I don't know what I'm doing. The original plan was to do all of Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, all by the end of June, but that is feeling quite ambitious at this stage. I don't want to exhaust myself. I want to have a good time. I don't want to rush through places. I can always go back, you know? I'm just gonna play it by ear, see how I'm feeling. I don't have group tours booked for that leg of my trip. I'm thinking I'll probably be a lot more confident with backpacking by that stage. I might even have met people on my Thailand tour who want to go off and do the same countries as me. So again, keeping it flexible, playing it by ear. I've heard it's all very social in the hostels around Southeast Asia. Are you planning on traveling to Japan? Unfortunately not. I don't think I'm gonna fit Japan into this trip. I've heard such good things though. A few of my friends actually are going to Japan later this year, but I've just got a limited amount of time and I can only fit so many countries into that time. So it definitely is on the bucket list for in the future. Should we talk a bit about the job aspect now? Because I've got a few questions about that. Could you lose your job as a result of taking a sabbatical? I hope not. The whole idea of a sabbatical is that I will resume my job when I come back. The company would like me to return. I would like to return. Obviously, there's always a risk, even without sabbaticals, that a company could make you redundant. Economic situations can change, but it doesn't look like it's heading that way for me. And ultimately, if they weren't happy with me taking the leave, they could have turned around when I requested the sabbatical and said, no, we're not willing to grant you that. Did you consider leaving your job and getting a new one rather than a career break? I guess I was quite set on traveling. If I hadn't been granted the sabbatical, I would have been forced to leave my job. But taking a sabbatical was always my preference. Of course, I want a security of a job to go back to after traveling. So no, I didn't consider it as my first choice of action, but I would have had to resort to that if my company had said, no, sorry, we're not willing to grant you this time off. Was it difficult to get your sabbatical approved given you've only just qualified? I don't know, I guess I had lots of conversations when requesting the sabbatical and explaining my reasons to my employer. It wasn't a snap decision, it was discussed over a period of a few months. It is quite common, I would say, after qualification for people to take a break just because the actuarial exams are such an intense, long slog. I know plenty of people who have either quit their jobs or taken sabbaticals shortly after qualifying to go and travel. It is a fairly natural break point, I'd say, within the actuarial career path. So I guess not a problem that I'd only just qualified. I guess more of a discussion point was at the time of requesting the sabbatical, I wasn't qualified. I hadn't received my final exam results. And it's probably less common to take a career break or sabbatical when you're still studying, because that disrupts your flow of studies. I would have had to take an exam sitting off or resit an exam while travelling, which wouldn't have been ideal. How did you drive the conversation for the sabbatical year with your boss? I messaged the manager of the practice in advance and said it'd be great if we could have a catch up. I actually wanted to have this conversation in person, but then I was ill on the day, so I was working from home, which was less ideal. In general, I would recommend having serious conversations like this in person, even though we have these hybrid working arrangements, but ultimately I wasn't well. And I needed to have this conversation sooner rather than later. So I did have a conversation via Teams call. I essentially gave the same reasons that I told you guys in my YouTube video about why I felt I needed a break, some time off. And I asked my manager if that was something he would be willing to consider. He obviously went away and spoke to other members of the team, especially people who I work with a lot, whose work would be more impacted by me taking time off. We then subsequently had some more in-person conversations. But I guess the main thing that I did from my point of view was try and communicate my reasons for needing the leave clearly, while also respecting the considerations that an employer has to have when granting this sabbatical leave. I knew that 6 months unpaid leave was a big ask. I've only been at the company 2 years. It's a consultancy, so sometimes you can't control how much client work comes in at any one time. And obviously January, February is year-end season, it's busy season for the team, and logistically I needed that time off to get the seasons right in the countries I wanted to travel to, but it wasn't ideal for the flow of work. And then also you've got to think about future people who might want to request the same sort of arrangement as sabbaticals. So I understand all those considerations from an employer's perspective. I would have fully understood if my employer said, no, we can't grant you the sabbatical. And then ultimately I put in writing the dates that I needed for the time off, and then got a whole sabbatical contract to sign off. And said sabbatical has started as I'm sat here right now. It's a Wednesday, I haven't been at work today, it's my first week of sabbatical, and it's so weird. Do you answer work calls? Absolutely not. I will not be checking my work email, my Teams, nothing. 1 or 2 of my colleagues do have my personal phone number. I'm hoping they're not going to use it. I don't think they will use it. Essentially, I'm just switching off from the job for 6 months. Last week, I treated it as if I was completely leaving my job, handing everything over, submitting my final timesheet, getting all of my work experience documents sorted that I need for my final qualification submission that happens in springtime. It's like I don't work for the company for this 6 months. And I'm sure it will be a complete shock to the system when I log back on in July. How do you feel about your job? That's an interesting question, you know, because a big reason I felt now was the time to take the sabbatical was because I felt my motivation dipping a little bit recently. I feel less invested in my client projects, less excited by new work coming in. And I'm wondering whether it's just burnout and I just need some time away from it. My projects had changed a bit in the last year. Obviously, I'm in a bit of a period of transition with my work because I've just qualified, and with that comes the expectation that I'll be stepping up a bit in the sort of responsibilities I take on at work. And I'm really keen to step up and move to that next stage of responsibility. So I'd say with work, I'm feeling so ready for a break. I'm not going to miss it in the next 6 months. And I'm hopeful that things could get a little bit more exciting when I come back from sabbatical at work. As an actuary, how did you manage to get a sabbatical? Was it offered to you or did you negotiate it? I had to open the conversation about a sabbatical. It's not a standard thing that is in the employee handbook that anyone can ask for at any time, which I know some companies have as a standard sabbatical offer structure after X years of service. But for my particular company, there is no standard framework I just opened the conversation with my manager. So yes, it took some back and forth negotiation, I guess. I should have probably answered this question earlier, but someone asked, did you quit your job or is it just like a really long vacation? It's unpaid leave. So I've not quit the job. I am still employed by the same company. It is just a really long vacation, except I'm not getting paid. Normally I get granted 25 days of annual leave a year, and that's paid leave. Whereas now I'm taking 6 months unpaid leave, and I'll have 12 or 13 days of paid leave remaining to take in the second half of the year. How much will it cost roughly? So I've been keeping a spreadsheet with my guesses at budgeting. I'm also very grateful to some group tour companies who are offering me group tours free of charge or at a discounted price. Obviously, all the content I make is going to be completely authentic to my own experiences. I'll be keeping it real, but also showing you guys some of the group tour companies that you can travel with. These are companies that I've done a lot of research on. My spreadsheet has a whole section on group tour companies and their different offerings and reviews. So I'm quite confident that I'm going to have a good time with the group tour companies that I've chosen, but obviously them gifting me the tours has reduced the cost of my trip significantly. The most expensive parts of the trip are going to be Australia and New Zealand. Southeast Asia is going to be comparatively much cheaper. I'm not a big drinker, so I think that is also going to reduce the cost of my trip significantly compared to other backpackers. But also it's going to depend so much on how often I eat out and what extra activities I want to get up to. So my best guess is 8,000. It could potentially be up to 10,000. But what I am doing is keeping track of all of my expenses, and I will do a roundup as I go on what things cost, and also at the end of the trip, as I know a lot of people are interested in how much savings they need to have for a trip like this and whether they can do it themselves. And there were also a few questions about savings. How did I save for this trip? I guess I haven't been consciously saving for travels as such, but my income has just been more than my expenditure. In the last few years, I guess I've been working 4 years full time. I've been fortunate enough to get a few pay rises since starting work as an actuarial graduate. I do have mortgage repayments to keep up with. Another question I got was, will you keep paying your mortgage, getting a tenant? No, I'm not getting a tenant. I'm not renting out my house. So I have had to factor in the fact that I'm also going to need to fund my mortgage as well as my ongoing travel payments. But I've managed to build up a few savings in the last few years from my YouTube earnings and full-time actuarial earnings combined. This links to another question I got, which was, would you have preferred to do the trip before uni, or do you think it's better that you're doing it now? Obviously, a lot of people do take a gap year and go traveling before uni, and that's quite a big age difference to me now. That's people going at age 18 compared to me at age 26. I think you'd have quite a different experience going at those different ages. For me personally, I feel I would have been so scared going before uni at 18. I'd never lived away from family or away from home before. Even moving out to uni was a challenge in itself and pushed the comfort zone, and that was within the same country. So I don't think I would have wanted to go before uni. I didn't really ever consider a gap year before uni, although I give full kudos to everyone who does do it. I've been following a few people on social media, someone called Diego who's 18, who's traveling Thailand right now and who's making really great videos and updates on his trip. And as people say, there's no correct time to go traveling. It's going to vary from person to person and what their own aspirations and goals are. I'm content with going at age 26 because I've had savings, you know. It's a lot easier when you've been working for a few years with budgeting and making the savings. I'm fully thinking now that I might treat myself to a hotel here and there while I'm traveling when I really need a recharge. So I'm not mad at the way I've done it. Another question on timing, why did you decide to do a sabbatical right now and not later in life? I think I partially addressed this in my announcement video. I'm feeling quite exhausted after all of my actuarial exams, so I knew I wanted some time out from work anyway, and I don't really want to spend that time out sitting in the UK and enjoying the UK winter. I want to go while I'm still in my 20s because I'm lucky enough to be nice and fit, can do lots of active activities. I don't have any ties when it comes to relationships. I guess later on in life I've got more goals on settling down and having a family. My work hasn't got to the point where I've got so many responsibilities that I can't take any time off. Although, to be honest, I don't know if I ever want to get to that point. I always want to maintain a work-life balance, but I think inevitably as you progress through your career, you get more managerial responsibilities. You find yourself specialising in different areas of insurance or actuarial work, and it would just be harder to completely step away from the job for 6 months. And who's saying I can't take another sabbatical later in life, you know? What happens to your house while you're away? So as I said, I'm not renting it out. I think if I'd been going for any longer than 6 months, I probably would have, but it's a lot of effort to clear out the whole house. I have accumulated a lot of stuff in there, and my parents want to use it as a bit of a holiday base, a holiday home, and do long weekend trips up there with the dog. I've even got other family members who have potentially expressed an interest in using the house from time to time. And yeah, overall it just felt easier and one less thing to organise. I've set up a load of home security cameras. The neighbours know I'm going away, so that's all sorted. What bag are you taking? So I'm taking a Mountain Warehouse wheelie backpack. I believe it's a 50-litre main and then 20-litre detachable day pack. I am going to film a full packing video. Someone asked, what are you going to miss the most? My straighteners, my hair straighteners. They are an item that I think I just can't justify bringing with me. I just don't know how my hair is going to cope in the hot weather and the humid weather, but we're just going to have to make it work. I've been practicing plaiting my hair and I'm probably going to live in plaits while travelling. Are you scared of spiders? I want to go travelling so bad, but low-key too scared. I totally feel you, and yeah, I don't really like spiders too much. I'm more scared of rodents and snakes. Mice and rats are my biggest fear in life. I will break down in tears if I see a rodent. I don't know what it is. It's an irrational fear. Spiders, on the other hand, I can cope with if I can see them. I don't like it when they suddenly disappear. I will often ask a friend or family member to remove a spider rather than doing it myself, but if it comes to it, I will be brave and take spiders out the house. That's my experience with UK spiders. As for Australian spiders, I don't know. I need to do a bit of reading up on all of the Australian creepy crawlies and wildlife because some of them are dangerous. The camera just ran out of charge, but we are back. Battery replaced. Next question, how do you overcome the anxiety of traveling solo and just enjoy it? I will let you guys know on this one as I go, because honestly I am feeling increasingly nervous as my flying day approaches. I'm trying to have this sort of long-term view that I am going to make friends out there. I mean, I'm staying in hostels where I will be sharing rooms with a bunch of strangers. You can't help but talk to people in that situation, surely. You are forced into friendship, whether you like it or not. But I think also there's a point on learning to be comfortable in your own company. I think I probably have reached a stage where I would feel okay to go to a cafe by myself, to a restaurant by myself, because actually all the people around you, they really don't care. Everyone is too interested in what they're doing in their own lives to be looking around and judging other people. And if they do judge, do you really care? As an introvert, I do value my time alone. I like a good daydream. I can sit with my own thoughts for quite a long time without issue. So that sort of aspect of traveling solo, I think I would be okay with. I am maybe more anxious about the whole social interactions with new people, but I think the main thing to remember is I just need to completely be myself, have confidence in myself that I am a nice, likable person and that people will like me for me. There is no need to put on a front or an act or fake it till I make it. I just need to be myself. And traveling solo, I really don't believe is ever going to be traveling fully solo. I am going on well-trodden backpacking routes that so many people do year after year. I'm not reinventing the wheel here, and I am quite confident that I am going to find a strong support system and meet some amazing new people. So I'm excited, as well as really nervous as well. Do you think that traveling alone as a young woman may be dangerous? So yeah, of course there is a safety consideration when it comes to solo traveling as a female. I don't plan on going out late at night by myself. I would want to be in a group of other backpackers that I've hopefully met, especially joining group tours. I think that eases a lot of my safety concerns, because there is a guaranteed group there that I am joining who will be traveling around with me and exploring places with me. I've booked myself a female only dorm room in Melbourne before I join a group tour, and I guess also all of the other solo female travelers out there will understand. There's a mutual understanding amongst female travelers, I believe, that groups are ideal, and I feel okay about it, while obviously taking necessary precautions. Are you afraid of being lonely? I'm almost afraid of the opposite, you know. I'm afraid of being completely overstimulated by being around groups of people 24/7. I've lived by myself for the last 2 years. I'm an introvert and I do value my alone time to recharge, and I'm not even going to have my own personal room most of the time while I'm traveling. I'm staying in dorm rooms, in hostels. Hopefully I won't be lonely. I'll report back. I think there will be an element of homesickness, missing family and friends back home. As always, whenever I do a Q&A, I've had loads of questions on my dating life, any dating updates. How have you found dating? Boyfriend, question mark? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you think you'll find the love of your life while on your travels? Some interesting questions. So, dating. I have been dating in the last year or so. I don't really share it on YouTube because it does feel part of my life that I just don't want to put online. But at the same time, I feel it's something that a lot of people in their 20s can all relate to. We're in this online dating age of using the apps to meet people. It's also so easy to see on social media all of these happy couples who are doing all these coupley things, and that can make you feel completely alone and by yourself. So I do want to address dating on my channel, while not speaking about the specifics of my own situations. In the last year, I did meet someone who I liked quite a lot. It didn't work out. As for dating on my travels, I am looking for a long-term relationship, and I don't really feel that travels and holiday romances lend themselves to that very well. And at the end of the day, it's okay that I'm 26 and single. There are plenty of other people out there who are also 26 and single, and I'm content with a lot of other things in my life. And relationship wise, I just need to remain calm and know that things will slot into place eventually. Would you still have gone if you had met a boyfriend? Someone has asked. That's an interesting question. I think I have had travels on my mind for quite a while now, so I've almost been dating with the thought in my head that, oh, I am going away fairly soon, which I suppose doesn't lend itself well either to the long-term relationship that I am seeking. So maybe I'm completely contradicting myself with my actions. In an ideal world, I would have met someone 5 years ago and be in a happy, long-term, committed relationship, and they would have gone traveling with me. But hey, we're not there. We'll deal with it. If I had met someone in the last year and I was in a committed relationship right now, maybe I would have gone traveling for a shorter time, but I would have still gone traveling. But to round up the dating chat, I think I'm feeling much more positive about dating than I was this time last year. This time last year, I was so frustrated. I deleted all of my dating apps in a strop, and I only really re-downloaded them at the start of summer. And that's totally okay too, guys. Sometimes you just need a break from the apps because they're not really set up to let you win. They are set up to get people to subscribe to them and pay extra money to them and keep people on the apps rather than to get people off the apps in happy relationships. So they're a tricky thing. How to study for actuarial exams. I lose my focus every time. any study method recommendations? I want to answer this question because I can relate to it so hard. By the end of my actuarial exams, I was just so bad at staying focused on anything. I think my best tip is have other people hold you accountable. If friends and family were asking me, what study did you get done today, I just feel really guilty if I hadn't done anything. So that helps me focus. Thinking about the long-term goal and how happy you'll be when you qualify, that helped me a lot. I really appreciated doing live study sessions on this YouTube channel, which I appreciate is such a niche thing, and not everyone is going to start a YouTube channel and then set up a camera and film themselves studying. But I felt that having a study group really helped keep me focused. So even having a study group within your company or going to a library where other people are studying around you, I think that can be really helpful for keeping focus as well. I've been looking at Welcome to Travel myself. Which tour package did you go for? So Welcome to Travel are the company who are kindly gifting me my tour of Sydney and up the east coast of Australia. I am doing their Rebel package, which basically lumps together their Sydney tour, the Blue Mountains and Port Stephens road trip, and then East Coast tour all the way up to Cairns. I wanted to do some hiking around the Blue Mountains, and I'm not much of a surfer, so the Rebel package doesn't include the surf camp. And then ultimately it also came down to dates. So in an ideal world, I would have done their Welcome to Melbourne tour and the Great Ocean Road trip. But with all of my other travel plans and getting around all of the other countries on my bucket list, there just wasn't time for that. If anyone else is interested in Welcome to Travel, I do have discount codes, so check out them in the description. This is just a random question, but it's, what are your eating habits? Do you have any healthy lifestyle rules? I would say I've got a really sweet tooth and it's not good for me. I love chocolate and I think I eat it a bit too regularly. But having said that, I don't tend to snack. I stick to my meal times with the exception of my coffee. I do like my 11s, always a coffee and a little biscuit in the mornings. I make myself home cooked meals a lot. I've been using HelloFresh for the last year or so, so I order in the fresh ingredients in their recipe boxes, and I like to think they have fairly good nutritional value. I am a meat eater, I'm not a vegetarian, although I've been trying to eat a few more veggie meals as I am conscious of the environmental impact of eating meat. And I think a lot of people I know would call me a fussy eater, which might be fair to say. But I am really excited to try out new foods while traveling, especially in Southeast Asia. When are you leaving? A nice practical question. I am leaving this Friday. So that's the 17th of January. But of course the flight is a long time and there's also a time difference, so I don't end up landing in Melbourne until the evening of the 18th of January. I'm hoping to be editing this video while I am flying, while I'm in the air, if my laptop holds its charge. So by the time this video goes up, I will be in Australia. Do you feel like taking time off to travel will set you back? I suppose this question is in terms of work. Yeah, I guess it's going to set me back in terms of what experience I could have in 6 months' time if I hadn't taken the sabbatical. I would have inevitably done new projects and learnt new things, had practice at new actuarial techniques. But I've decided that I value the experiences I'm going to get while traveling and all the benefits that come with taking a break. I value that more than the work experience I could get in the next 6 months. Given that I've already accumulated 4 years of work experience, you know, how different can it be? And I'm going to get that work experience in the second 6 months of the year. So I think over the course of a career, it's not going to be a material impact on my career trajectory. Hopefully. How would you recommend looking for new jobs with a couple of years experience? So I only have experience of doing this in the actuarial space, and I'm not sure if the person asking the question is a student actuary or in a different field, but from my experience, the easiest way was to just get in contact with some recruiters because they can just help with things like negotiating salary and finding a number of different job opening opportunities and just working with you to find the ideal job that meets your criteria. Obviously, you have to be careful with recruiters because sometimes they're looking out for their own commission rather than your own job satisfaction, but they're a great way of putting you in front of the companies and finding opportunities, even if they're just informal conversations to start off with. And that's my other tip. Have plenty of informal conversations. You lose nothing from sitting down and having a chat with the company about a job opening, even if you go into it thinking this job isn't for me. And also make sure you value your own experience and don't compromise on your own things that you're looking for on a job and your top priorities. That's my advice. Are you planning to do your masters anytime in the future? I think the thing for me is I don't want to do another qualification just for the sake of doing a qualification. I want to be intentional with any future study that I do, if I do any future study, because at the end of the day, exams are hard work and I do find them quite stressful at times, and I don't want to put myself through that if it is not to progress my career or to get to some other goal that I've set for myself. And I don't right now have any long-term goals that would involve a master's. That could change in the future, but right now there isn't plans to do a master's for that reason. Any tips for balancing studying and working full-time, a social life and everything else? I get this question quite frequently as well. I guess because that's what people perceive me to be doing, to be juggling study, work and social life. And I don't know, I think I've just got on and done it because it was what I needed to do. When it comes to balancing work and study, early communication with colleagues on when you're taking study days really helps set expectations, and just setting clear boundaries, especially when exams are approaching, of times you need to finish client work in the evenings so you can study. I think that's really important, and just not feeling guilty about doing that, because the other people you're working with will once have been students too who also had to do that same thing and prioritize their study. Study is so important. Qualification has a big impact on your employability and your career trajectory as an actuary, so prioritize it. Make sure you set those boundaries and get those study days in and don't skip them, even if deadlines feel really tight. As for balancing your social life alongside everything, I think just don't feel guilty about taking time off. Sign yourself up to hobbies and activities, like I've taken up ice skating, I used to do coxing. These activities are scheduled every week, which means I'm not going to miss them. I've got into a routine of going to them, and it forces me to take time out of whatever else work or study I was doing. I don't know if that was a very good answer to that question. Just solidarity. I'm there with you, and I do think balancing everything does get easier after you've qualified and you don't have to juggle study anymore. I've had a few questions on just tips for actuarial exams. I need some advice on SP8, CP1 preparation tips, CS2 tips while closed book, any tips for the specialty exams. Well, I'm not sure. I think the biggest tip that I would say to myself if I was still studying is get started on past papers early. Don't bother going through all of the course notes and the combined materials packs. I just think reading over the notes and even the chapter summary questions are a little bit of a waste of time when you can just dive into past paper questions that are more representative of what you're actually going to get asked in the exam. Actually doing the questions just makes things stay in your head more than just reading it, passively reading it. I think the specialty exams and CP1, any of the more wordy written exams, are a little bit of a game of knowing what the examiner is looking for and understanding the phrasing of a question. And I think the only way you can get that is from doing past papers and reading examiners' reports really carefully, taking note of the angles that the examiners want you to go down. I know it shouldn't be so much of a game, but it is. Tips for CS2, my biggest tip is really don't discount the R paper. When I did CS2, I didn't do very well in paper A, the maths written paper, but I brought it back with the R paper and I managed to do well in it, I think because I'd gone through all of the ACTED paper B preparation day examples. So do the ACTED paper B preparation day, or at least get your hands on the materials and go through the code for all of the examples, and you should find, hopefully, maybe, that the actual question you get in the exam resembles one of those ACTED practice questions. And as for the exams being closed book, I'm afraid I don't know how much advice I can give you because I haven't done them closed book myself. All of my exams were open book, but they're making a big change with the actuarial exams, and from next sitting they're all going closed book again. I would say I do believe that ultimately this change is going to be good in the long run because it's going to reduce the number of people who are cheating in these exams. And although it could be harder for some subjects, especially the wordy written subjects, you're going to have to memorize a lot more things. But just remember that everyone has to deal with that as well. It's not just you who's having to memorize all this stuff. No one has access to their notes. And so hopefully the difficulty of the papers and the pass marks are going to adjust to reflect that. Final question, congrats for your professional qualification. How did you stay positive after failing once? Well, I actually failed more than once. I failed CP1 on my first attempt, I failed CP2 on my first attempt, and I failed SP8 on my first attempt. So I had 3 fails on my journey to qualifying, and honestly that's quite normal. It's very impressive for people to get through the exams with no fails, so congrats if that's you. But I would say you got to take the fails as a learning experience. Clearly when I sat the exams for the first time, I didn't fully understand what it took to pass that exam. And honestly, it was just a bit of trial and error. And that's okay. You're allowed to do trial and error with these professional exams. You are allowed to retake exams, and no one thinks any less of you once you're qualified. Especially if you're not far off the pass mark when you fail, you've got to take that as a boost, you know? You're really close. You've only got to do a little bit more to get you over the mark. And I guess for me, there was 13 exams in total that I had to get through without exemptions. When it comes to failing some of the exams, you just think to yourself, gosh, I've got so far right now. Am I really going to give up after passing 7, 8 of the exams? Now I'm failing a few. Am I going to throw in the towel now? Of course not. Okay, I have definitely rambled on for long enough, but thank you so much for watching the video. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions. I am super excited for what's coming up for me this year. The vlogs will be commencing very soon of my travels, so please do follow along, both here on YouTube and on Instagram and TikTok. Give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload, and I will see you guys soon with another video. Bye!